I would like to start today's session. So if you'd like to mute yourself, we'll go through today we'll go through a little bit of theory first, then we get into practice, and then we'll keep moving all the way. Okay. So I want to do a little embryology fast track to from conception to the development into a fetus. Okay. So there was there is a sperm and there is an egg. Okay. And then I don't know if you have ever watched any YouTube video on conception, but it is really quite magical. It is like so the moment of conception is it's like a little implosion. It's kind of like a big bang, but in a microcosm phenomenon. So when the sperm penetrates the egg, and this all has to happen within 24 hours of ovulation, and then conception happens. So, and then it's not, we don't actually become two, we actually become one. It's really two becomes one. And then this is called a zygote. It's a fertilized cell. It's a single cell unit that has life. Okay? And then this life force growth begins to this way. Life force propels growth, and then one becomes two. So in many embryology textbooks, they call it multiplication, but instead of multiplication, it's actually division because they replicate. Okay, so two then becomes four, four becomes eight, eight becomes 16, and at one point we become a whole bag of cells. Okay, and I think it's at the point, if I remember correctly, is around 64 cells dead, and all the while the egg or the embryo, okay, started to move down the fallopian tube up, and then starts to get implanted on week one, implanted into the womb place and burrow deep in the womb. And we're just this ball. This is what you are in the beginning. It's just a ball. And it's called a morula, which also means mulberry. So have you seen a mulberry before? It's really just kind of like a ball here. And then it's implanted in the womb space. Okay, burrow deep. And this is when magic really starts to happen. This implantation happens, and then cell differentiation starts to happen. So meaning that the cells begin to recognize what they are supposed to become. And then there is this process that happens that folds this ball of cells into a bilaminar disc. From this, it becomes two germ layers of a laminar disc, and then it rolls itself into kind of like a canola. It becomes this, and there's two layers. Okay, the inside layer is called the endoderm. The outside layer is called the ectoderm. The endoderm eventually becomes the yolk sac. Okay, the endoderm moves close into the yolk sac to draw nourishment, and then the ectoderm, which is the outer layer, becomes kind of like the protective back body that swims again in the amniotic fluid, in the amniotic sac. And in embryology textbook again, it says that a third layer starts to develop. But according to Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, the founder of Body Mind Centering, she claims that through her own research, her own embodiment findings, I'm not at her level of sensitivity, but she found that it's actually the life force that interacts between these two layers and it spawns a third layer, okay? This third layer begins in a point called the perineal streak. And you can still find it in the perineal body, which is, one second, I forgot. What was it? This point actually begins in the perineal body, which is between, it's called the primitive streak, not the perineal streak. It's called the primitive streak. And this is the beginning of the third layer, which is the layer in between the ectoderm and the endoderm. And it begins between where the genital is and where the anus is. So the center of the perineum itself. And there it grows a notal cord, a center, okay, a midline in which all the other structure begins to originate. Okay, so from 2 layers, we become 3 layers. And what is happening in the third layer, this layer that comes in between, that is spawned from the outer and the inner layer, this becomes the connective tissue. Okay? So in case you get confused, which I know this is very confusing because it took me a long time to understand, you can rewatch the video or you can find out more about embryology. But what I want to just quickly move through is that the endoderm, which is the front body, the inside layer, becomes our gut tube and becomes our digestive tract, and then grows and becomes our organs, our lungs, and the gut tube also it begins as a single tube that joins from the bottom of the embryo to the top of the embryo, and this is where it is directly connected to the source of our nourishment. And in our current developed body, in this body, our gut tube is still our source of nourishment. It's where we draw food from. Okay? The back body, which is the ectoderm, becomes our spinal cord, our nervous system, our brain, and our skin. Okay? That's why I think in one of the workshops I've mentioned that the skin is our brain turned inside out. So our skin and our brain came from the same germ layer. And the middle body, okay, which is called the mesoderm, becomes the connective tissue. Connective tissue includes our blood, includes our fascia, our bones, our ligaments, our vertebral body, and this all comes from the same middle layer. And our fascia creates the structure and form for our body. Okay? And eventually, this cannula, this from bilaminar becomes trilaminar. And in week 4, develops a head, a trunk, and limbus. Okay, so we actually grow we have limbus before we grow our legs and our arms. So our hands actually come out first and our feet come out first, which is why our hands have a close relationship to our heart and our center, and our feet have a close relationship with our pelvic floor, with where our pelvis is coming, because we come out from there. Okay, so this is where I'm going to get to in today's class now. And week 4, because this is where we start to move extrinsically. We start to, before that it was all intrinsic movement. Was all the division of the cells, you know, the nourishment that is being drawn from the yolk sac. But week 4 is when we start to have a heartbeat. And then we begin to continue to divide, and then we grow fingers and toes and lungs and ears and lips and nose. All these peripheral appendages begins to grow, begin to move outward. And the body, the embryo becomes, from this embryo, start to become a little bit straighter. Our body becomes straighter. And then week 8 is when it is no longer called an embryo, it's called a fetus. It's called a fetus because by that time, our umbilical cord is connected to the placenta, and then extrinsic movement begins in the womb, in the fluid, within the fluid. So I'm just going to share this picture with you. 2 pictures. Okay. So this is around week 12 already. And you can see the fetus is very developed at this time. It can swallow. It already has the kidney. The kidney is making the urine, and the bone marrow is creating blood. Can you see?
Looking at a starfish.
It's a star.
You're looking at starfish. Oh, that's strange. Okay. Can you see now?
No.
That's weird. Okay. Let me try one more time. Technology. What about now? Yes. Okay, so this is week 12 of fetus. Okay, it's very developed. It already has a beating heart. The heart has 4 chambers. It has kidneys that make urine. It has bone marrow that makes blood. So all these intrinsic capabilities are already present and developed. And by week 12 is usually when people start to announce, hey, I'm pregnant, right? And because this is when growth has stabilized, and extrinsic movement is really starting to become more developed. The baby at this time because the eyes are developing already, will have the eyelids closed to protect the eyes. So its sense of the outer world is really through the vestibular system, which is the first system to develop. And the first kind of yes, the fetus is going to develop, so that it knows where is up, where is down, what is around. Okay, and this is when it starts to prepare itself for birth too, because it needs to know how to orientate itself to move through, to turn it around and move through the birth canal. And so, okay, tell me if you see the starfish now. Can you see the starfish? Give me a thumbs up if you do. No, damn it. Okay, I'm going to redo this again. Okay. Okay, starfish? Yes. Great. So I can't find a nice six-legged starfish, but basically the fetus is like a starfish. It is connected. If you look at the center of the starfish, that's where the umbilicus is, and then it connects to its limbs. Okay, so imagine that the starfish has 6 limbs instead of 5. There are actually 6 limbs within us. Because in the extrinsic movement that comes from within, so movement begins intrinsically first, where growth happens, and then we start to explore the environment around us, outside of us, through our limbs. So the head is a limb, the arms are limbs, the tail is a limb, which is why we don't tuck our tail. The tail has to be free. So imagine that the tail in the starfish, and our 2 legs are also limbs. So if we look at the beginning of extrinsic movement in a starfish, the root of all our limbs comes back to our navel center, where the umbilicus is. Okay, are you following so far? Give me a thumbs up. Great. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to stop share for now before I continue. All right. So in body mind centering, and actually it comes from Laban movement, developmental movement, there's this principle called navel radiation, whereby we move from the center. So the root of our arms comes through to the center. The root of our legs comes back through to our center. Our head is a limb, it should be free. Our tail is a limb and it should be free. But the energy and the source always comes back to the navel center. And this center is between the front and the back, is between the 2 sides, and is between the top and the bottom. Okay. So this is also, and this center, this source, is where we begin to connect to something that is greater than our form, because this is where we connect to our mother. This is where we connect to nourishment, and this is where we connect to protection, and this is where we connect to life. So a lot of repetitive stress injuries happen. So injuries in the wrist, injuries in the tennis elbows, rotator cuff, neck issues, L4, L5, S1 issues, knee issues, ankle issues. These are all, they can be mitigated when we can reconnect them back towards the center. And in Tai Chi, in Qigong, the center is the Dantian. And it's also where the great source is. So in many traditions, in Eastern philosophy, there's always this center, this source, this where do we begin? Where do we then end? where is the beginning and where is the end. So it's a movement from the inside to the outside, and still having that anchoring point back to what is within in order to go without. And the last few weeks I've been also talking about how can we hold two opposing viewpoints, two opposing perspectives. So how can the inside be the outside, and how can the outside be the inside? So in the yoga itself is the ability to hold this dual awareness of what is within and what is without. And then how we express that through movement, how we move through space, how we move through life. Okay? So shall we start to move? So just make sure that you have your staff. So you're going to have 2 pairs of socks. You can have something weighted. So I've even got the idea that canned food might work. I've always talked about water bottle. And then you're going to have a cushion or a bolster and a blanket. Okay? And then we will begin lying down on the floor. I just want to check. We'll probably go over a little bit today. Is that okay? Because we started late. Yeah. Is that okay, Dan? We're gonna go over. We will probably go over today. Yeah, Lana is okay. Great. So lie down on your back, and then I will talk you through the first part. Okay. So lie down on your back with your legs long, arms by the side. If that is comfortable for you. And you can bend your knees as well if the lower back doesn't really like to be in this position. So if you have any impingement in the lower back at the moment, you can have your knees bent and your feet on the floor instead. And if you're comfortable with your legs long, have your legs long and arms by the side. And I'd like you to just take a moment to settle. And find comfort in this position, this relationship with gravity and space. So using the floor as a mirror to feel how your body weight is imprinted into the ground. And then taking a moment to find your connection with gravity, forces that are greater than your physical form, your breath, your life force. And if you were to superimpose the visual of the starfish again that we have just now see on the screen itself, what would the starfish of your body look like? Can you find the center of the starfish? The center between the front and the back, behind your navel. The center between the left side and the right side. along the midline. The center between the top half of your trunk and the bottom half of your trunk. And this space, this pivot point is the center of the center of the center. You feel how it's pulsating through the movement of your breath, fluids, warm. And I'd like you to just bring your hands into a diamond shape. So join your index finger and your thumb together and place it over your belly button, over your navel. And then begin to just sense into the movement of the breath. Feeling the expansion of the breath as you inhale. So the expansion moves in 3 dimensions, front and back, side to side, top and bottom. And then feel how in the exhalation, the breath, the life force anchors back to the source. Begin to sense into the quality of your breath now. And tune into these inner rhythms. Notice if your attention is alert but relaxed, or if you're starting to drift off away from the center. Now you can use your hands, whichever hand that feels comfortable for you, and I'd like you to just trace from the center of your navel, move it all the way out through the midline, all the way to the face and to the crown of the head. And then back from the crown of the head, you can move through the face, touch your eyes, your nose, your cheeks, your lips. You can touch your ears, explore your neck, feel the shape of your lips, and then moving back down through the front of the chest, back to the navel center. And move through this a few times. You can just sense from the navel center, find this limb of your head. So often our head is disconnected from the center of our being. We just think that the head is separated from our body. So use your hands to find from the navel, to touch yourself, just gently caress the space between the navel to the head. You can also touch the side of the head, the side of your neck, the front of your neck, the back of your neck. You can even begin to just roll your head side to side to feel into the back of your head. Sense how the movement of your head moves all the way back to the navel center. And then the next time your hand travels back to the navel center, release the hands, take your arms back out to the side, come back to baseline. And notice if you have more clarity of the connection from your navel all the way to the head. And next, I'd like you to place 1 or 2 hands on the navel again and begin to explore from the navel to each arm. You can just slide your hands from the navel to the side of your chest, to each side of your shoulder, down the arm. Feel into the shape of your arms, the upper arms, the lower arms. Sense into each finger, the shape of your hands, the shape of your elbow joints. Go underneath the armpits. You can even reach towards the back of your shoulder blades. Just explore this connection from your hands to your navel, from navel to the hand. Maybe also sense into the side of your rib. And if you finish exploring one side of your arms, explore the other side. Sense how the arms come through or grow through the center of the body. From the center, the limb buds emerge and then the arms grow. And then come each finger. And then the next time your hands come back to the navel, once again, just let it go and take yourself back to baseline. Sense into the 3 upper limbs, the 2 arms, and the head, and feel how they connect back to the center of the navel. And feel the weight of this upper part of your torso all the way to the 3 upper limbs. Place your hand on your navel. Again, let's explore the 3 lower limbs. You can move from the navel all the way to your pubic bone, to the lower belly. You can slide the hands behind. If you want to roll a little bit, you can roll onto the side and feel into the lower back and into the spinal column to find your tail, find your sacrum, sense to where your tailbone is. You feel this center that is not just in the front or not just in the back, but is in between, the space in between the front and the back, the space in between the 2 sides. And then you can explore the 2 lower limbs as well. So the legs, you can reach the legs up if you like to, and feel into the shape of your leg bones, the femur bones, the kneecap, the the shin bone, the ankle, the feet, the toes, to the spiral shape of your bone structure. And how everything fits so perfectly. And then bring everything back to the navel and explore outwards again. So you are always moving back and reconnecting with your source. And even as you are moving your body to explore this connection, notice any movement that you make has a ripple or an echo through to the other limbs too. Good. And then coming back to the center. Take the arms out by the side, the legs long. And then just noticing once again the organization of your body. Notice if there's more clarity of your sixth limb. Sensing the breath from the navel center, expanding outwards into the boundaries of the skin, into the fingertips and the toes, the crown of your head, the tip of your tail. But it always comes back to the center. So you are beginning to regain or remember this innate potential to hold this dual awareness, to know where you are, who you are, how you are, and why you are. Okay, and then now bend your knees and have your feet on the ground. Take the arms alongside the body. And just bring your awareness back to the navel center. So the point between the front and the back, the midpoint between the two sides, the midpoint between the top and the bottom. Exhale completely and find the breath condensing into this midpoint. And then as you inhale, slowly expand from the navel center towards the three upper limbs as you take your arms up and over your head. And then as you exhale, attention and awareness back to the navel center. Bring your arms slowly back down onto the floor next to you. And then repeat this movement again as you inhale, expand from the navel center, reaching up and over. And then as you exhale, slowly coming back down. And see if you can connect this extrinsic movement from where it is inherently intrinsic. That every movement that you are taking across space will come from the root of your being, the source of your being. It's just a continuity in this movement that comes back to the navel center, and it also has a continuity down towards the lower limb. And then if you like to, you can allow your arms to move a little bit more freely. Maybe you want to reach one arm a little bit higher up towards the ceiling, or move it across the midline and feel how it moves through the navel center towards the other side, or towards the lower limb. And since this movement through the inner fluidity, and if you are embodying this inner fluidity, can you find yourself moving through an outer fluidity as if you are cushioned and held by the amniotic fluid in your mother's womb? And notice now how the three upper limbs are working in unison. And the echo, the ripple effect, how the three lower limbs are organizing themselves to move with you all through that midpoint behind the navel center. Good. And then slowly let your arms come back down. Have the arms by your side. They don't have to be very close together now. You can have the arms wide. Okay. And then have the 2 feet on the floor. Now I'd like you to take a breath in and then expand from the navel center to slowly lift your buttocks off the floor as if you're rolling up into bridge. And as you exhale, you condense back towards the navel center as you lower the pelvis down. And just moving through these few bridge rolls. Finding the connection from the navel center to the lower limb. Not just the legs, not just the 2 legs, but also the tail. And find this pulsation, this continuity of movement all the way through the navel center to the upper limb. So it's a dialogue between all 6 limbs and the communication center in the navel. And then you can play now, maybe just press 1 foot at a time into the floor and notice how it takes the other limbs through this movement. And you can also explore if you want to take the legs, 1 leg up or both legs up towards sky, towards the ceiling. Notice how that moves through the whole organization of the 6 limbs. So if you like to bring back the visual of the starfish, a 6-legged starfish held through the navel center through this umbilicus, the source to nourishment and anchoring the source to home base. And if you can allow this sixth limb to move through a sense of weightlessness, a sense of being held, being contained by something that is greater, a force that is much more formidable. Notice how that offers freedom for shape-shifting and adaptability and integration. And then slowly bringing the body back to stillness. Have the legs long again, arms by the side. Take the arms wide, legs long. So you are in the shape of a six-limbed starfish. And in this dynamic stillness, feel and sense into this intrinsic movement from the navel center, pulsating outward and anchoring back in. Now, I'd like you to just roll over to your side so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm just going to give you a little demonstration. I'm going to move into slightly more structured movement before we come back into play again. Okay, I'm going to get you to do something called the C curl. Okay, so bringing the attention to the navel center. And I'd like you to just turn to one side and open up, and then curl over to the other, and then open up. So you're moving through the C curl here. So even though it's an asymmetrical movement, there is a center to this. Okay, so I'd like you to just try that. See if you can let the breath guide you. And notice how you can initiate this movement. At first, it might just look like you're just taking your elbow to your knee, but then can you begin to let this movement be initiated from the navel center? And feel how the weight shifts from side to side. How the limbs organize itself or themselves as you move through space into these C shapes. So the C shape is not so much the shape of just the arms and the legs, but imagine the spine curling into C shape on each side. So you're going into lateral flexion. Okay, and then come back to the center. Take a moment to rest so that you can Anchor back into the intrinsic movements. Anchoring back to the navel center where the source of movement begins. Okay. Then we're going, then turn around to the side again so you can look at the next progression. You're going to move from the C curl into a theta position and then expand it out. And over to the other side, C curl into fetal and expanding out. Okay. And see if you, again, in the beginning, because I'm doing this demonstration, you might be just doing the shape first, the form of it, but then as your body, as your awareness begins to shift, bring it back to the navel center so you are condensing and expanding, and condensing and expanding. And notice the breath that corresponds with this movement. And even though you feel that it's just the arms and the legs that are moving into C, notice what the head and the tail is doing. If the head has two sides and if the tail has two sides. And then can you draw all of it back to the navel center? Okay, and then come back to lying with your legs long, back into the shape of a starfish. Just take a moment to process this experience. Notice the shape of your body now, how the 6 limbs are organized. Okay, then once again, just bring your attention back to the screen for a moment. Next progression, okay? So the next time you're going from starfish, navel center, you're going to come into C curl, into fetal curl, and then expand out into sitting. And then you're going to reverse the movement back into fetal, C curl, out to this, and then starfish. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate one more time. Starfish, C curl, fetal, navel radiation into seated position, condensing back into starfish. Let's try that out. See if you can always come back to the center and then expand the movement from the center. So this is intrinsic to extrinsic movement. So there is muscular activation, but the movement is held and contained so that you can expand beyond the boundaries of your skin, beyond what your mind think is your field of awareness, but let that expand with an anchor back to the center. Okay. And then the next time you come back onto starfish, once again, just take a moment to process. Let it sit. Come back to dynamic stillness. hold that notion of movement and stillness that can coexist. And then draw everything to the center as you bring your knees up and hold your knees and bring your chin towards your chest. Draw all 6 limbs into the center and then expand it outwards back to starfish, and then come back in and just do that a few rounds. Expand out, coming back in, and then expanding out. And notice if the head, if there's any clenching of the jaw, if the head feels heavy, and then maybe as you curve in and expand out, still holding on to your legs, you are able to come upright into a vertical relationship and then go back into a fetal curl and expanding back into starfish, drawing back in by keeping the limbs holding to each other and expand energy outwards to come into sitting. And just move through this a few times. Make sure there is no pain here. If there is pain, please cease this part of the practice and just find other options. And if there is a lightness that propels you into a vertical relationship. Beautiful. Good. Let's do one more round. So that the descent back towards the ground is also soft. It's a soft landing as if you are just moving through fluid. And then come back to sitting. Well, next time you come up, find your way up to sit. And then come on to your hands and knees. Okay. And find your center here. Take a moment to pause and reorganize your nervous system to be in another position. Okay, find the navel center again. Where is the center between the front and the back, the center between the two sides, the center between the top and the bottom. And then begin to move from the center. Once again, come moving through this cat and cow. So oftentimes in this cat-cow roll, we can initiate from the tail or initiate from the head, but this time I'd like you to initiate from the navel center, outwards, and then drawing it back in. And feel how, when you are drawing outwards, when you are expanding outwards, there is this drive to connect, to engage with what is outside, what is happening beyond the skin. And then when you draw back in, there is this introspection that comes back to knowing who you are. And it is possible to hold these two perspectives, hold these two polarized embodiments. So as you move outwards, are you still able to feel your center? And as you move back in, can you still have the courage to take up space, to exist? Then come back to the center. Come back to where you feel your balance and even. Okay. Then I'd like you to just begin to slide your right leg back. So expand from the navel center and reach the right leg back. And then slide it back to the center. Do that a few times and feel how the other 5 limbs organizes themselves in order to support this movement. Just sliding the right leg back and then center. Yeah, see if you can keep the right leg on the floor. Is that possible? To just slide the top of the right foot on the floor. And then the next time you slide the right leg all the way back, turn the right foot out. So you're doing an external rotation of the right leg and feel how it turns you all the way. It moves you all the way to the navel center. Let me do this. It moves you all the way to the navel center. So you're coming kind of into a gate pose. You can try that another. Again, slide it back and then open it up. Yes. And if you can find and reverse this movement back to the center. And then maybe the arms can begin to float up. And then the next time you come up, stay here in the gate pose. So here is the C curl again on the left side. Yes, beautiful, good. And then you can take the right arm that's in the sky and then find a little bit of freedom here. You can circle the arm across space and then drawing back to the center. So this movement of extrinsic exploration moves from the inside. Good. And then the next time, you take the arm back down, move yourself back to the center. Compare the right half of your limb, maybe even if your head has 2 sides and if your tail has 2 sides, what to experience. And then do the other side, slide the left leg back into center. Extend the back into center. And see if you can find the initiation from the navel. Good. And then maybe you want to explore the movement a little bit more. Begin to roll outwards and come back to center. Roll outwards into a C curl. Notice which side is more fluid, which side tends to have more connection to the center. And then the next time, stay in this C curl and find this intrinsic movement from the center, even though you are holding a supposedly static pose, that you're still able to find that pulsation and the extension from all 6 limbs. And then you can begin to explore the space around you a little bit more. So how you always can come back home to the navel center. And then the next time you draw back towards the navel, come back to tabletop. Just notice how you're organizing the 6 limbs now. Okay. And then begin to just rock your weight side to side, so that you take maybe the right hand, right knee off, and then left hand, left knee off. So this is also a C curl. Okay. And then come back to the center, and then play with contralateral movement, taking the right hand forward, left leg back. So we're reaching further now into space. Are you still able to come back to what's within? And then take the left hand and right leg back. And the thing about repetitive injuries is because we're so focused on what's outside of us, but we forget what's inside. And then the next time you come back to center, try to walk or crawl forward. Go to just explore the space, do some crawling around the space that you have. And then also explore crawling backwards. And notice that this movement, even though crawling on hands and knees is a contralateral movement, but the initiation comes from this C curl. So last week we explored the yielding to push and then to reach. It's the same principle. This yielding to the center of the earth, to the center of our being, and then to expand and push from there to reach beyond our skin into space, but to also draw the awareness back to the source. And then once you've had enough, just come back and then just sit back into child's pose. Taking a moment here for a reset, sensing the breath in the belly from the navel center. If you want to sit up and just release, check out your wrist a little, because we're going to do a few more things on our hands. So you're going to come back into all fours. And I'd like you to find the movement. We do a lot of hands and legs. Now let's come back to the midline. And then just move forward and back a little. So you're reaching towards the limb of your head and then reaching back to the tail. Passing through the center, the navel center. Notice your breath here. Okay. And then begin to play a little bit now, maybe moving in a circle. Feeling the weight, going back to last week's class, how the weight travels through and how you can yield into this weight to push. But this, as much as we connect to the center of the earth, we are also connecting to the center of our being. Change in another direction if you haven't yet. Okay, and then come back to the center, and then through this spinal reaching forwards and back, you're going to move your way into a down dog. And keep the knees bent in down dog so that you have the tail free. Okay, and then begin to just so-called walk the dog in yoga. So you're just bending one knee and then reaching the opposite heel towards the ground, towards the earth, and feel this C-curl movement as well as you bend one knee and reach the opposite one, extending the opposite one. So in yoga, we just go like walk the dog, and everyone turns out to be just doing like bicycle paddling. But can you make this a movement from the navel center? Yes, great. And then now add in some hand movement now. Begin to walk the hands to the feet. And notice this C-curl as you traverse through this movement and walk the hands back. Walk the hands to the feet. And walk the hands back to dog. One more round, walking hands to the feet. Notice the C-curl each time is coming back to the navel center. And then once you're in down dog again, stay. Keeping the knees still pretty soft so that the tail and the head is free. These two limbs have very, very, very close association with each other. They are like husband and wife. Okay. Now, once again, moving through this midline, you're going to go from dog pose to kind of like an up dog, and still keeping this energy in the navel center to take you all the way back into dog. If this is too much for you or for your hands or for your wrist, you can just bring your knees down and move to the same thing like we did earlier. But if it is possible to cycle through, good. And then the next time you cycle back through dog, And then keeping the knees bent, bring yourself back into child's pose. Taking a restoration moment. Okay. One more round of playing on your hands and your feet. Okay, you're going to come back into a downward facing dog pose again. And then I'd like you to just find a little bit more buoyancy through each leg. And notice how, again, it's a C curl here. If you want to, you can bring the knee closer to the navel. And then you can also start to extend the leg away, like a three-legged down dog. So all these vinyasa poses that we move through in yoga, okay, we do it with a little bit of a different intention of initiating through the navel. And then maybe the next time you reach the leg up, you can cross that leg over behind you. And then find the C curl to expand. You can cross the leg and then over to the other side. Once again, finding the C curl to expand. Just play around with expanding, condensing, expanding, condensing. Okay. Nice. Come back to the center. And then walk your hands to your feet. Just take a moment to get off your hands. Keep the knees soft. Hold opposite side of your elbows. And just release the limb of your head from the navel center. Let the tail be free. And then you can drop the arms. Now you're going to curl up. But this curling up doesn't mean you tuck your tail, because if you tuck your tail, you lose that connection to the 6 limbs. So keep the tail free. Draw back to your navel center to come up into stand. Nice. Once you're in standing, just stay for a moment. Just let your nervous system once again come back to this slightly different plane, a different relationship with gravity. Okay. Nice. Just take a moment here in this mountain pose. Mountain pose is yoga, and yoga asanas has all these names in Sanskrit: Tadasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, all these names of animals and things in nature. And it's all about embodiment. Right? So how do we embody this mountain pose? And I've seen people who are super rigid. Certain lineage of yoga is called for like, but if we are still swimming in the amniotic fluid, but the pressure, this fluidity actually gives us that containment, holds us back into this umbilicus point in the navel center. Can you find this broad base of the mountain through the feet that comes through from the source? And then this length and space towards the sky and the perspective. We play with peripheral vision the last few classes. So you notice your peripheral vision. How wide is your perspective? And can you still feel the front and the back body, the two sides, as you stand between earth and sky? Center of your navel to the center of the earth. Okay, and then slowly open your eyes. Just a quick check-in. Everybody okay here? Good? Okay. Now, you're going to put your socks on. And have your canned food, your weight, your water bottle. Okay, and then come back to mountain pose when you're ready. It'd be funny if we do all this core work and then you slip and fall and trip when you're putting socks on. Okay. So just hold this object, this weighted object, in front of your navel center, but without tensing your belly. Notice if there's anywhere in your body that you're tensing, maybe your glutes. Yes, your glutes are slightly activated in order to keep you standing so that you are not slouching. But is there any unnecessary holding in the pelvic floor, in the belly, in the quads, in the chest area, in the throat, in the jaw, in the eyes? So as we come up to be more vertical, into a vertical relationship with the environment, I know that we talked about this last week, that we are the only mammals on planet Earth that walks on two legs. So our senses, we begin to rely a lot more on the senses around our head. So our eyes, our ears, our mouth, when we are baby, it's where we begin to look for nourishment through the mouth. But can we still draw these senses of what is coming through, bring it back to the navel center, so that there is this embodied intelligence that's coming from within to engage and connect. Okay. And then we're going to play a little bit now. So I'd like you to just move the ball from one hand, or the weighted object from one hand to the other, and feel the shift in your weight shifting, but still keeping this sense. So you're moving slowly first. And notice as you shift from one side to the other, it's always kind of like a C curl that's happening. And see, expanding. One side is like a spring, one side curls, the other side opens. Okay, and then begin to let this movement become bigger. Maybe you can let the feet slide It's like you're skating. Yes, and then let's get bigger. Get bigger. Maybe get lower. See if you can keep the feet on the floor so you maintain this connection to the earth. And then maybe change your perspective. You can turn. You can maybe take the ball to some other movement variation. See if you can get lower to get higher. See if you, even if you don't have eyes behind you, do you have what we call proprioception? You know where you are, where your limbs are, where this extension of your limb through the weighted object is. Maybe you can try getting down onto the floor in order to get back up. But you stay connected to the ground. And notice you're only holding this object on one hand. It can be the right side, it can change to the left side. And this object becomes an extension of the limb that's holding it. But then how do the other 5 limbs organize themselves around and there is always a center that they are talking to, they're communicating with. Nice. Okay. And then the next time you come up, whenever you're ready, come back to mountain. When you're ready, take your time. Put the weighted object away. And just notice this. If anything has shifted for you, and what is the quality of your embodiment of the mountain pose? Okay. And then you're going to put the other pair of socks on. You're not having 2 pairs of socks on your feet. The other pair of socks are on your hands. And I think we did this before, maybe 4 lessons ago, 4 workshops ago, where we did some floor mopping. So we're going to revisit that. But this time with the intent of initiating the movement from the navel center and then from the center out and back in and finding this seeker. Now notice that this starfish is always organizing itself through this seeker. Okay? Okay. So when you're ready, wherever you want to start, you can start with just finding this vertical relationship and then slowly getting to the floor. And then you can begin with just mopping the floor first, like what we did in the last class, or you can play with other movements. So when we go into the distal, how do we come back to the center? This is always the hard part. We always want to look outward, but then if we lose our center, we collapse. So how do we find our boundary and push our boundary? When does it need to be pushed? Or when do we still have to always come home so we don't lose our way? You can also play. This is one of my favorite, is to do a roll, kind of like a shoulder stand, roll over and then reverse that. Enjoy, have fun. Attempt to really play if you have something that you want to dance with, maybe an object you want to dance with. Sometimes I dance with, or I move with an object that I choose. Or if you have a ball, a gym ball, a roller that you want to play with. Or if you like to just be still and just sense into more of the intrinsic movement from the center. And when you're ready, just come back to laying on your back again. Just take a moment to come back to the starfish shape and listen to there's the intrinsic movement that guides how you engage with this world, how you engage and how you relate has more clarity. And then I'd like you to just bring your attention to the screen once again. Okay. And if you have a bolster or you have a big cushion and a blanket roll or towel roll, okay. And then what you're going to do is to bring your belly over. So you are in a starfish shape, but on your front instead. And then you're going to take this roll, make it comfortable height. So your forehead can rest on it. And then feel the center between the front and the back. And then how it also radiates through the 6 limbs. Take your time to organize yourself. If you have a ball, you can also drape yourself over a ball. That's also an option. Yeah. And then I'd like you to allow the soft belly, the soft organ to yield into the front of your abdominal wall. And if it's uncomfortable for you to have your forehead on the whatever surface that you're on, you can always turn your head to the side, or you can fold your hands underneath your forehead. Just try to really find a place of comfort so that your attention can be redirected back to your inner being. Basically, just notice once again how this reverse starfish continues to pulsate and radiate itself from the center. Maybe you can feel a little bit more movement in the back body, into the back of the kidneys, and the kidneys become the root of your legs on each side, and the center between the 2 kidneys around L4, L3, L4 down to the tail. And then feel the space between the shoulder blades, between the lungs, and they radiate out into the 2 arms. Each lung is extends into the arms. Each side of the lung extends into the arms, into the fingertips. And center of the heart extends towards the head. So the head and the heart are connected. And developmentally, they are connected too. They grow through in the same process. Movement begins even before our brain is developed, before we have a nervous system. There is already the language of movement, the language of this intrinsic life force that moves us. If you have your head turned to one side, you can change to the other side. Or if you feel like lying on your back again, you can switch. If you feel very comfortable lying on your front, and you can feel the whole center of your navel connecting to the center of the earth. Stay there if you so choose. Let's begin to wiggle a little bit from the navel center. Feel how that ripples through the rest of the midline, through to the limbs. And if you're on your belly, slide the hands alongside your chest. And then the next time you exhale, find your navel center and then expand from there as you push into the ground. Slowly roll up into sitting or sitting back on your heels into a child's pose first. Taking a moment to prepare your nervous system to re-enter the verticality with the world around you. Slowly find the navel center from the earth center Draw it up towards your body into the 6 limbs and extend, expand to rise into verticality. Sense into this relationship now, to where your place is in this world, in this room, in this body. And the ability to hold this dual awareness of the inside center to the earth center and to the space around us, to the people around us, to the environment that we live in, to the planet that we live on. And bring your hands together, palms in front of the heart. I'd like you to allow your next exhale to empty completely until you can find that still point in the navel center. And then as you inhale, reach the hands up to the midline, to the crown of the head, and then open it out, extend it out, and then draw it back to the center. You exhale and taking another breath. And then this time, just open the hands out to the side, into the ether, reach it back up towards the sky, and then bring it back to through the crown of the head, back towards the heart. Taking one more breath here. And as you exhale, bow the head to the heart and the heart to the navel and to the center of the earth. May all beings be happy, be peaceful, and be loving. Thank you.